will be provided. So in our lecture 4, advanced computer hardware interaction, that's what we are going to be interacting with today, inshallah, in our class. Just a moment. Sure that everything is in line. So as I told you that today we are going to be talking about advanced computer interaction. Okay. Basically, some of the things, as I told you, we have the clue, but to go into the details. Advanced computer, it is to go deep into the understanding of how the different gadgets interact with one another. Booting, that is the process of starting the machine, and then we shall go into the process of booting, where we talk about the BIOS, the CMOS settings, okay, the post configuration, the firmware. Then we shall share the concept of electricity a little bit, the voltage, the watts, which are found in different components of the computer. Then we shall also talk about the computer advanced functionalities, explain the computer functionalities, they explain the CPU, the processor architecture, how it works very well. Then talk about the different methods of storing information, okay, the different common ports used in our machine. So we shall be internally trying to share all that, and then we see how to move on. Okay, then describe the monitor characteristics. What are some of the features as a technician that you need to base on to buy a monitor, okay, to buy a screen for your client, for your customer who comes to you? How do we upgrade our computer? How do we select different components to upgrade in a computer so that it can meet its requirements? So all these concepts, what we are going to be sharing from today. The lecture may not be so, we may not completely go through everything, but others we shall be joining them next week. Then we talk about preventing or protecting the environment, okay, from what we always get out of the machine. Now, when you talk about booting, everybody here knows our warm booting, cold booting, or the process of starting. But when you talk about the process of starting here, you can't fail to mention about post, okay? Post, when you start the machine, automatically goes through what we call the BIOS setting. That is the basic input-output system. It performs the hardware checkups to see all the components connected onto the particular machine are connected. It checks the mouse, it checks the keyboard, it checks the hard disk, it checks the RAM. And that's why when you start the machine, you get a sound notifying you that there is some gadget missing. As a technician, but depending on the sound, you can understand what type of hardware is missing in the machine. If you receive 1, 2, 3 of them, you understand that, oh, I'm missing this, or I'm having failure in this. Or if it is continuous, that kind of sound, it gives you that maybe your computer system is not functioning, or you don't receive completely any sound, then automatically you may find that your machine is not on. These are all aspects that we need to understand when the machine is started. So that's why it is called power on self-test, the testing of the hardware. Okay, so whenever the machine has some malfunctioning, automatically you receive an error code on the screen, or an error message, an alert, and as a technician, you can know what troubleshoot. So I want you to track up this assignment, and then you try and check what are some of the error beeps you get. Next week, when I come back, I'll be just questioning you. If I receive one beep, what does it indicate? If I receive two beeps, what does it indicate? I want you to go and then search on the different beeps. There are almost 16 beeps which may come onto your machine, and then it will help you to detect what type of hardware is totally down. So please take it up as an assignment. You just be with it, don't submit it. But when I come, you can be in position. If I ask you that it beeps once, what does it indicate? It beeps 3 times, what does it indicate? You'll be in a position to explain what it indicates. Okay, so then when you talk about BIOS, it is found on the motherboard. BIOS, it is what checks that the machine is on. Okay, you can remove it. Most of the time we remove it if we have some problems with the computer, and if the computer is not working, we can remove that BIOS chip. Okay, so as you can see that the BIOS is a RAM chip on the motherboard that contains small programs that controls the communication between the operating system and the hardware. Okay, so that BIOS is very important, and whenever you see that you have problems with your time, that whenever you come to your machine, you find the time has changed, automatically what is making it to change it is from the BIOS. So along with the post, the BIOS identifies the following items that you see. It will identify the hardware availability. It will also what type of drive that it will boot from, because we know that we have hard disk, but hard disk, you may have more of them. You may have 1, 2, 3 hard disks. So it is through BIOS, it will be in position to check which kind of gadget has the operating system. That is only got from the BIOS setting. Okay, so it will check whether the connectivities are well connected onto the machine. Still talking about BIOS, motherboard manufacturers save motherboard BIOS settings in what we call CMOS memory chip. That is the one that you see on your screen. That is CMOS memory chip. Okay, so it is the one that you remove. It is like a battery which empowers our settings to carry on. So to try and then avoid the issues of having your time changing, it is through that kind of chip, even to know what type of machine that you have. So when the computer boots, we have already talked about it. What it does, it checks the BIOS settings are retained by the CMOS using the battery. So these settings are always retained using that battery. So whenever you see that you have a problem with your settings always changing, mainly the time, automatically you check the BIOS battery. The BIOS battery may be dying. Okay, so those are the important things that you check whenever you find that your machine changes the time. You just check on the battery. But again, that battery you can, because it's like the battery of our watches. If you remove it, you can simply just use your tank a little bit to generate more energy, or you leave it out, and when you place it back, automatically it works. You may find that whenever the machine is having some few issues, that CMOS battery, you can remove it and then take it back, the machine will work. Like if you find that the machine is not showing anything on the screen, you may try to first check the CMOS battery. The CMOS battery, if it is malfunctioning, automatically everything that's on side, because we have already said that it is the BIOS which helps you to boot the machine. It checks. So if the CMOS battery is totally down, then you are going to get problems in the machine on starting. So with the latest BIOS setting, most of the computers today, they run what we call the UEFI kind of setting, the interface, the firmware which are used nowadays. These are the extendable firmware which have been used in order to find ways of making changes, updates in our CMOS battery. Okay, so these are all new computer. All new computers come with that kind of firmware, which provides additional features, addresses the security issues with our BIOS. Nowadays, it runs on 32 bits and even 64 bits systems. Okay, so it supports both of them. So regards on the type of the machine that you do have. Okay, so basically, what are some of the advantages that we use? Some of the common securities which are found in BIOS. There is password, which allows you to have different password on different levels. Like I can have a password in BIOS that to start this machine, I go and I put the password in BIOS. A password in the BIOS, you put it when you're aware that you may record it, because the machine, if it is totally down, and then you want to go through BIOS to do more changes, because we're going to see how do you access it, inshallah, next week. How do you go through BIOS? I'm going to be making for you a quick video so that you can easily understand how do you go through BIOS. But to go through BIOS and you apply a password, you may find that if you forget it, the machine will need to go through BIOS, CMOS battery, remove it, take it back, the password is gone. Those are the techniques that we use. If the password you have forgotten totally the BIOS, if you find the machine is saying that there is a BIOS password to access that platform, what you do, you remove the CMOS battery. The CMOS battery is found where? On the motherboard. You'll find that battery there. You remove it like that battery of the watch that we have. So it does all that. It secures the secure boot, meaning that it helps you to select the right kind of hardware that you're using. Okay. Then you can also update. Okay, motherboard manufacturer may publish updated BIOS version to provide enhancement in the system, stability, performance. Okay, these are all things which are added onto our machine. Okay, the earlier computers, okay, you'll find that our computer BIOS information was controlled in the RAM chip, and to upgrade the BIOS information, the RAM chip had to be physically replaced, which is nowadays is not the case. You just not only go through Windows and then update the firmware. That's why you always see make updates. Those updates, before you were supposed to buy a new one, a new ROM, which was very expensive. But nowadays you just need only to install a software to go through updates, and then you have all updates of your computer, and the computer goes back to different mechanism. Okay, so that is called flashing the BIOS. Whenever we update it, we are totally flashing the BIOS. So to download a new BIOS, okay, they tell you to try to consult with the manufacturer's website, and then for the recommended rate of installation, because it depends on the type of machine. When you put that on the manufacturer's website, automatically it will be in position to show you the right information. Okay, then it will all ease everything for you. Once you put, it will check the type of machine that you are using, and then automatically it will tell you that your machine is compatible with this type of updates. Once you put it there, then sharing the concept of electrical power. I won't go through too much on it because you are covering electricity. Okay, so we may not go too much deep in that kind of concept because of the concept that you have with electricity, wattage and then voltage. Okay, there are basically 4 basic units of electricity that a computer technician must know: voltage, current, resistance, and power. Okay, in senior 6 and even senior 1, we covered those kind of things. Okay, so if you have forgotten, I want to go through the calculation of Ohm's law. No. I want to go through that, but I just need to show you that these basics, you need to be knowing them. Okay, those calculations, we may not have them, but at least you need to know where they come from. Okay, so talk about the power supply voltage settings. Okay, on the back, sometimes they do have switch, that switch that you see on your screen. Okay, that switch that you see here, it is a switch which is totally used, okay, to indicate this switch that you see here. Basically, we use it to, the power supply has it, you can trigger it to put off the power supply or on. So we always use it whenever we want to use it in our machine. Okay, so it is very important to know how they are used. So this switch sets input voltage to the power supply to either, that one depends on the type of power that you do have. Okay, 110 volts or 220 volts. These are the types of power supply. So these are power supply members, the technician that I'm talking to, you need to be knowing the type of gadgets that you are going to be adding in your machine. If you find that most of the components that you are going to add in your machine will require more than that voltage, then you're going to find most of the time that the machine is restarting. Why is it restarting? Because it is not having enough power. And why is it looking for enough power? Because whenever it goes off, thinks that now the voltage is okay, then it finds that more gadgets are applied on it and it can't supply to all the gadgets. So you need to be knowing, or if you are going to buy powerful gadgets to be added onto your PC, will they be supported by the power supply that you do have? Okay, so it is very important to detect the type of power supply that you have. So if a power supply does not have that switch, it is automatically detects and then sets the correct voltage. Okay, it automatically will do that, and then it will set the correct voltage that you are meant to use. Okay, there's no problem with that. Somebody will ask, what if I don't have it, for it to automatically switch accordingly? So the correct voltage setting is determined by the country where the power supply is used. In Uganda, we don't have our own power supply, and that's why when you are buying things from Japan, you may find that you need to put more protective gadgets. If I'm buying it from US, you may find that in US, for them, they're using 220 volts, most of their appliance. Then you come to Uganda, you find that for us, we have lower, or we have a higher. Then if you have bought something which is of lower, and here it is high, then you need to use other gadgets to condense that power so that the machine doesn't go. You remember very well, some of you buy different gadgets at home and immediately you put through the circuit, you lose it. Why? Because it doesn't support the type of power that you have. So we have different fluctuation in power types. These are the different things which may happen to our power. Okay, the type of AC power that can cause data loss, okay, or hardware failure, okay, brownout if you have complete loss of power, okay, or reduced voltage. Sometimes, you know, in Uganda, all of a sudden power goes off, then you're going to get a lot of interruption. Yeah, from you have sparks, okay, and the sockets may spark. These are all different types of dangers that you may get. And what do we use for protection? These are the gadgets that some of us we have at home, unless you have never gone closer to you have never used a machine. But these are some of the gadgets that we do have. Okay, so you find that these are the ones that we have, that we use most of the time in our homes. Okay, I think we have got the point there. Okay, now just to continue, these are the different types, the UPS that which are used most of the time. Okay, you can use them. and then you find a way that you can engage with them. Okay, just a moment. A moment, guys. Let me resume recording. So I was talking about the different power protection devices that you can use. You always know we have sockets at home that we use. They help us, to protect us from dangers. Depends on the type that you may try to use. The UPS that we have, I think some of you have ever seen them in lab 4. We use them just to protect against different power problems that we may receive as we use these gadgets. Okay, so we have standby power supplies, okay, the generators and many other components. Now let us go to advanced computer functionalities. Advanced computer functionalities. Now it's like breaking down all the gadgets that we've been sharing in the previous classes. We started with the CPU, the processor. Processor has different architectures, okay? As we know that, why do we need to have processors? It's just to help us quick ease our instruction that we give to a machine. That's why we need to talk about it here. Okay, so basically, when you try to share the concept of computers here, the CPUs here, it helps you to understand what we are going to be sharing here. Okay, so there are two types of architectures which are used inside the CPU. May use one, it is reduced instruction set computer, and another one is complex instruction set computers. These are architectures which are used onto the machine, and that's why you find that you have hardcore 3. There are chips inside the processor which are doing different functionalities, which are responding to the different functionalities that you give it to a particular in computer. So while the CPU is executing one step by step of the program, the remaining instructions and data are stored nearby a special, and that is the cache that we talked about, where you can just know that by 2 on Thursday, I have Mr. Usama's class. It is in your cache memory. Just triggers that it is Mr. Usama's class. You can't say that it's Mr. Asadu's class. By 4:30, if I'm still on, automatically you're having another class there. So this is it already in your cache that you may not forget your name, okay? How can you forget your name? That I'm called Musa and then you forget your name, Musa? No. That if you forget it by different problems, different instructions which are too much on your brain, then automatically your cache has already lost the focus. So these are the different things which are found in the CPU, whereby you just tap on G and then it types to Google. Okay, you type on W and types WhatsApp. You just type F and then types Facebook. Okay, so how do we enhance the CPU operation? We enhance it using different mechanisms, what we call the hyper transport, the speed of connectivity between the CPU and the North Bridge chip. That those North Bridge and South Bridge chips are found onto the motherboard. So to connect and give the message, because North Bridge and the South Bridge, they have different controls of different gadgets that you have. North Bridge controls different components, and the South Bridge, you find that it controls different components. Try and find out what we need to find on the North Bridge. You'll find that North Bridge South bridge, one is controlling RAM, another one is controlling the hard disk, another one is they are controlling different gadgets on your machine. And that's why when you give an instruction, that speed that it uses to communicate between those gadgets, that no, the information is supposed to be for the mouse, the information is supposed to be for a hard disk. That is what we are calling hyper transport, the speed that they use. AMD processors. These are all types of processors. Somebody may ask, what are the different types of processor by different manufacturers? You'll find that your machine supports AMD processor. If you try and open under properties, you'll find that type of processor that you're using, or you're using Intel. Okay, these are the types that we are talking about. Intel processors, AMD processors. These are all found in the different manufacturers. Okay, so that's why at first you have the Intel processors, okay, very fast machines, and then we have AMD processors. Okay, these are the different manufacturers coming up with different machines. The power of the CPU is always measured by the speed and the amount of data it will always process. And that's why we always talk about the gigahertz. Okay, I have 4 gigahertz. You have 1.7, 1.2. You check your machine. If you are still in 1, well, your machine is very slow. Okay, okay, your speed of your processor is very down. Okay, you can improve on it by buying a suitable machine with a better processor. Okay, so enhancing, again, we can enhance by using overclocking. Overclocking, it is a technique used to make sure that the computer works very fast, okay, but not exceeding its original speed. Okay, I understand that if I may give a clear example, like we human being, well, like if you overthink too much, you may end up collapsing. Okay, like now this during COVID, people overthought about COVID. That the time that you get COVID and you start thinking about it, that is the moment that you find that you may even end up collapsing or dying. People fear too much. They tell you that you are HIV positive. Wow. The moment they tell you, and nobody even told you to go and look for it. The moment they tell you that you have it, for sure you may end up collapsing. Why? You have superseded your overclocking altogether. It is moving too much that it supersedes, and then you get a problem. So overclocking is not recommended way to improve the performance, or improve the computer performance, can result into damaging your CPU. So if you give it too much work, you may damage music, video, playing a game, and the game is very, it has very powerful graphics. You may end up losing your machine, okay, if it doesn't support such kind of technique. So the opposite, we have the different techniques used to when the processor runs at lesser than the rated speed, okay, to consume little power, okay, to reduce on less. Whenever the processor is given too much instructions, overheating, okay, and then that's why it has the fan. That's why if I have DJs in my class right now, you know that whenever you go outside there and you have a PC or a laptop, you need to have like 3 or 2 fans around that PC. But even inside it has its own fan. Why do you need to have them? It is to avoid the CPU to be overheated. So whenever it is overheated, you get problems. I think I'm clear about that. Then you talk about the CPU virtualization, okay? The virtualization is the hardware which is supported by these 2 manufacturers, okay? The AMD or Intel CPU that enables a single processor to act as multiple processors. Virtualization, that's why you have dual core, okay, the different cores of machines, okay, to support it. You have single core, dual core, triplex, okay. These are all to help enhancing the machine, okay. They are well explained here. You can take your time. Where we have integrated is, okay, here we're talking about graphics. Okay, another feature found in the CPU, it is what we call integrated graphics processing unit. Integrated. That's why you talk about that Intel machines are better than the AMD machines. Why? Their graphics cards are so good. These are all aspects that we are trying to share, that some of them, they have integrated ones and then dedicated ones. Integrated one often directly embedded in the CPU. Integrated one, you just direct into the CPU. It depends on the system RAM, whether the dedicated GPU is separated chip with its own video memory. These are all aspects that you need to share and then understand. When you go to your clients, that what type of machine are you going to buy for him, that you need to find out. Are you going, is he so much interested in a nice video card? So you need to try and then find out what type of video card are you going to buy for him, and what type of latest video cards. I want you to try and search about it. That assignment, I'm giving it to one person in my class. Please, you go and then try and find out what are some of the latest, okay, video cards, or some of the powerful video cards that we have, okay. Ashraf Hassan, please work on that assignment. It is your own assignment. Next week when we come to class, you are the one to tell us what are some of the latest, okay, graphics cards used, whether for gamers or for what, but the better one, if you are to recommend a client, if he's so much in love with the graphics. So please, Hassan Ashraf, that is your assignment. I will also include it with Al-Hajj Saddam. You also try to also check on that. And then Yasir, you're also part of the team. So those are the three people who are going to try and search for us. What are the powerful graphics card that you may recommend to somebody who is so much in love with graphics? So Yasir, that is your simple task. Three of you. When I come back, you are the one to tell us. Salam.
Master, we have 3 Yasir in the class. Which one are you talking about?
We have 3. Mugisha.
Two.
Mugisha.
Okay.
Even Ashraf, we are 2.
Ashraf, I said Hassan Ashraf. So you are 2 Hassan Ashrafs?
No.
Let us continue. So Ashraf, you'll get yours. Don't get scared anytime. Okay. Now we are trying to share the concept very well. Now let us talk about the cooling mechanisms. The cooling mechanism, we talked about them in our first classes, that fans are always used to cool down the machine. I've just talked about it in the previous component, that power supply, they need to have coolants because they are given a lot of instructions. So you need to cool them down whenever you give them a lot of instruction. So that's why they are always powered by the fans. And that's why when even if your laptop, you find that you always hear a certain sound. If it is too much hot, that sound is just cooling down the gadgets. And then we have the heat sink, or the CPU heat sink, okay, has a larger surface area with a metallic fan in order to blow out heat from the CPU, okay? It blows out heat, and that's why they call it passive. It gives out heat, not active, doesn't need power, okay? So it takes out the heat. That's why I warn most of my students I have ever told a repair that don't put the laptop on your thighs. Okay, Ashraf, never put your laptop on your thighs. You may end up with problems. You don't have kids, you have problems. Every time the ladies are, they are tired of. Why? Because you over put the laptops on your thigh. And the more you put your laptops on your thigh, you get problems. And that's why we have problems of cancer coming in. Okay, why? Because of that heat sink. It is blowing out heat. And what type of heat is it blowing out? A dangerous heat altogether from the metallic components. And then it ends up in your body. And then at the end, you're already troubled with a lot of problems. So it is also a warning for those people who like watching movies, and then they always love to put things closer. Okay, we have this fan of the CPU. You can see it here. Okay, for those people who can see it clearly, it is here. Okay, and then these are all different components. They have their fans, like the graphic card. It has a fan because if you're a video gamer, you find that surely that video needs, the card needs to be cooled down because you open powerful graphics, and then the machine will need its coolant so that it doesn't, it is not affected. So all those things are very important to be understood. Then there is a technique of water cooling system. I'm not saying that get water and then start pouring it on your machine. Okay, okay. So please don't get Teddy, don't get your laptop and then very early on Sunday you are washing your machine. You are very serious, a nice technician, you are washing your, no. I'm not talking about how the cool. This is very expensive. The water cooling system, very expensive. Okay, they pour their water and then it starts to cool down the facilities. As you can see, very powerful one. Okay, this is the one that we are sharing here. It is very powerful. Okay, compared with what we are talking about, very powerful. In Uganda, hey, you may not so much find them in our world of work. So, but also they are cooling systems. Now let us try and share quickly this concept. At least you shared, this concept was shared in computer system. Okay, we're talking about, in simple terms, that gadgets that we put like flash, hard disks, they store data, okay? But they store data using different segments. Altogether, a computer can implement redundant arrays. Okay, we call it redundant arrays of independent disks. The disk has its own technology, the way of storing data across different storage devices, depending on the device that you put. So it has those kind of mechanisms, mirroring, that means duplicating information, altogether scripting, then enables data to be distributed, okay, across multiple devices. Altogether, these are all different components, different mechanisms which are used to store data on the various hard disks. So they can be explained here. They use different numbers, the minimum number of devices that it can use when you are duplicating 2, okay, 3, 4, 1, and their advantages, what it can add onto the different gadgets. So then different ports here, we have serial ports, we have parallel ports, as you can see them with their respective diagrams, okay? Serial ports, you can find them here, depends on the gadgets. Sometimes you may find that they're used with them. Basically, when you're going to connect scanners, printers, modem, what they connect to, this is very easy to be understood by everybody in my class, okay? Then we have video and then graphics ports, okay? The DVI, okay? People so much in the movie industry, they are fond of using them so much, okay? Then we have the VGA, okay? You saw them in lab 4, those VGA cables. Then we have HDMI cables and the rest. All these are different cables which are used to connect to our machines. Okay, we have USB type B, you have USB, type C. These are all different aspects of different, connectors. Then we have SATA connectors. SATA connectors and SATA cables and connectors. They do come from the hard disk. They are the ones supplying data from the hard disk to the motherboard. Hard disk to the motherboard. So they use those SATA connectors. From our previous virtual reality computer that we did, I don't know how many of you who have tried it. You can tell me in the chat whether you tried it. Please, whoever tried it, please tell me in the chat if you tried using the virtual desktop. Okay, you just put it in the chat and then I will know how many of you have tried it. Okay, so we have the SATA connector, we have eSATA cable. Okay, these are all the types that we are talking about. The eSATA cable here, down here, you can see it. Okay, then it has its own adapter that you can have here. Okay, then we have twisted pair cables, that is for internet. Okay, the Ethernet. Okay, for the RJ45, RJ11. These were the older telephone network. Okay, which were used previously. For some of you who have ever seen them. Okay, these are all different, cables which are used by internet, or some of them are used by different gadgets, depending on the type of gadgets. Like you can see for internet, cable TVs, satellite TVs, that is RG6. Okay, very expensive, and they have higher bandwidth or high speed in connectivities. Okay, all of them are here, we can interact with. Then we have the IDE cables, which are nowadays not so much found. IDE cables, not so much found. People are using SATA connectors. With most of the latest computers, they are no longer using the DIE cables. They're always using the SATA cables. Okay, so these are the ones that we are sharing here in our small pictures. You can witness them. Then talk about briefly, let us try and share with the concept of the different, if you are going to buy a monitor for somebody, what are you supposed to cluster it with? Okay, main computer monitors are usually described by all of that. The screen size, the resolution, monitor resolution, native mode, connectivities. These are the things that we consider if you are going to buy for somebody any type of monitor. Okay, its resolution, its size. Okay, all these are different the terms which you find being used. Refresh rate, the amount of time, the amount of seconds for a picture to be reviewed. Okay, that's why you find that your machine, you just tap on the picture, it opens within a second. Those are all determined by the refresh rate, the time that it refreshes to give you the result. Okay, so all that is very important to be understood from the concept that we are sharing now. Okay, the response time. Okay, so all these are very important when you talk about basically the monitor. Okay, the display standards that we need also to understand. Okay, we have color graphics adapter, or the standards are very many. You can find them here. The VGA, the HDMI, what, these are standards when you are buying the type of monitor. Will it be in position to have that capacity? 4K, okay, can it handle 4K videos? Okay, you put a 4K video on your machine, nothing you see, even the voice you can't get it. Then already your standard of your machine is very low. okay, using multiple monitors. How do we use multiple monitors at the same time? Adding monitors to increase your visual desktop area or improve productivity. You can add them by using different connectors together. Okay, so many computers have inbuilt support for multiple monitors. Okay, to connect multiple monitors to a computer, you need to enable your computer to support them. Okay, either get a display cable, like we have the VGA cable, you connect it there and then you move on. Okay, so dear students, these are some of the aspects of what we call the advanced computer functionalities. Okay, so now talking about the computer configuration, this is where we're going to start from next week, about the computer configuration. How do we configure the computers? Okay, configuring the computer is very important. The notes I'm going to be giving it to you. When I come back, it will be very easy for us to go through them, and then we see how we can succeed. So basically, those are the aspects that we need to understand about computers, the advanced computers, and then you shall find a lot of benefits out of them. So the next meeting, we shall start from 4.4, and that is the configuration. How do we configure? How do we talk about the motherboard? Please, you can go through them. And then when we get back, we are on the same page. Are we together, dear students? Okay, so unless we have some disturbing concerns, I want to say that at least today we can stop there, and then